Hi guys, Righteous Raymond here, back again with another powerful dose of truth for the day. And that is this. This is the answer as to why you have such a hard time, or why you had such a hard time leaving that narcissistic connection, whether it be romantic or platonic. Romantic meaning a partner that you're dating romantically, or platonic meaning a family, a church, a job, a civic organization, or whatever, okay? This will explain to you why you had such a hard time leaving. There's this syndrome known as Stockholm syndrome, okay? Stockholm syndrome. I think it's based on something that happened in Sweden, I believe. I'm going to read you the facts, okay? And I'm going to break down to you this syndrome that you may have that may explain why you have such a hard time leaving your offender and why you always defend what you say with them, okay? So this is according to AI Overview on Google. So this is based on how accurate this website is. And I see some sources based off of the Britannica, I guess, encyclopedia. So it may be legit. So the Google AI Overview says that August 1973 Stockholm bank robbery at Kreditbanken, known as the Normalmstorg robbery, I think this is in Sweden, lasted, guess how many days this bank robbery lasted? Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, 6 days. Imagine being a worker or a customer at a bank that's under a 6-day hostage situation, a robbery, okay? So during this bank robbery hostage situation, four hostages, I'm sorry, my tongue getting twisted. 4 hostages developed a surprising bond with their captors. Is this not wild? Okay, their captors were 2 men, John Eric Olsen and Clark Olofsson. So the 2 captors, the 2 bank robbers and the kidnappers, were Jan Eric Olsen and Clark Olofsson. The syndrome was based off of the reactions of these 4 hostages. Very strange reactions, okay? You may remind you of yourself. Just listen to me if it sounds like you. Somebody that you know. After these 6 days, the hostages feared the police more than they feared the 2 pew men. These men had pews, okay? You can't rob a bank without a pew or a BOMB. All right? A kaboom. So they feared the police more than the gun. You know, even though the police were coming to help them, they feared them more than they feared the pew men. This led to the creating of the phrase Stockholm Syndrome to describe the psychological response to captivity. So I'm going to tell you some of the key facts of the robbery. I'm going to tell you these, and I want you to tell me if you think this syndrome applies to you. So the perpetrator, convicted thief Jan Eric Olsen, on furlough from prison, attempted the robbery on August 23rd, 1973 in downtown Stockholm. Olsen demanded 3 million Swedish kronor weapons, bulletproof vests. I'm trying to edit the word for TikTok and YouTube purposes, and the release of inmate Clark Olofsson to help him. So he wanted to recruit his friend to help him. The hostages were 4 employees: Birgitta Lundblad, Elizabeth Oldgren, Kristen Enmark, and Sven Safström. They were held in the bank's vault, the big old vault with the big old doors. They were held in the bank's vault for over 130 hours. 6 days. The hostages later reported, this is where it gets strange. Those are the facts. Here's where it gets strange. Here's where the syndrome kicks in. The hostages later reported that Olsen was kind, with one hostage, Enmark, even calling Prime Minister Olof Palme to argue against a police rescue, fearing for the captors' safety. One of the 4 captors, who should have been relieved when the police came to help him, actually called the Prime Minister to argue against a police rescue. Like, tell the police to leave us alone. Tell them to leave us alone. Tell them to just go away. This is how much their mind are missing. This reminds you of yourself when your friends try to help you out with a bad relationship, or your parents, and you argue to stay with your captor, or a boyfriend, or a fiance, or a husband, okay? In the end, on August 28, 1973, the police pumped tear gas into the vault, forcing the robbers to surrender and freeing the hostages unharmed. It's another strange thing that happened. Stockholm Syndrome. The hostages defended their captors and refused to testify against them. Have you ever seen a victim of being hurt? Have you ever seen them defend the woman who? You ever seen that before? Does it sound familiar? Does it sound like something you've done before? Have you ever seen a victim refuse to testify against the person that abused them? You seen that before? They even raised money for their defense. Okay, they raised money for their defense. All right. Olsen received a 10-year sentence, so it didn't work. Now, here's the psychological components of the Stockholm Syndrome. Okay, let me just read the overview real quick. Stockholm Syndrome is a psychological response where hostages or abuse victims develop an emotional bond, sympathy, or positive feelings towards their captors' abusers. Considered an unconscious survival mechanism under extreme stress, victims may defend their abusers and distrust authorities. So when the police come in or the CPS come in to protect the children from the negligent or abusive mom, the kids begin to attack the DCS worker, the DHS worker. They hate the police because they're like, you're taking my mommy from me. Your mommy is the one causing all the pain. All right. It is not recognized as a mental disorder in the DSM-5, so it's not like a diagnosable disorder, but it's just understood. This is according to Psychology Today and some other sources. The key psychological components of Stockholm Syndrome is it is a subconscious, biologically driven response to trauma aimed at lowering the risk of violence from a captor by appeasing them. So if somebody has this to your head, you'll be like, no, don't leave him alone, don't hurt him. He's not likely to pull that thing. You know what I'm saying? Because you're defending him. Trauma bonding, the intense emotional attachment formed during intense life-threatening situations. You tend to get, like, if you've ever been hazed before, players before, you get a bond with people that you've been hazed with before. It's a trauma bonding. It's forging you together, okay? And paradoxical gratitude. Victims may perceive minor acts of kindness, for example, being allowed to live, letting you use a restroom, letting you use a restroom, letting you drink a bottle of water. They may perceive that as minor acts of kindness. They may perceive that as genuine compassion, which reinforces that trauma bond. They're like, he didn't have to let me use the restroom. He didn't have to let me use my EpiPen or let me use my insulin pump. He's so kind. Okay, so some core symptoms to know if you have this: development of positive feelings towards your captor, negative feelings toward people who are trying to help you, rationalizing or defending the abuser's behavior, and feeling powerless to leave. You ever feel powerless to leave? Feeling powerless to leave, often accompanied by symptoms of PTSD, such as nightmares, anxiety, and distrust. The core factors for the development of Stockholm Syndrome is a threat. The victim perceives a threat to their survival. Kindness. The captor shows, or the abuser shows small acts of kindness or spares the victim's life. Like, I didn't blow your brains. Isolation. The victim is isolated from perspectives other than the captors. All you see, you don't let you talk on the phone with your family and friends or the counselor. You're at home all day with him. You don't know any of their way of thinking, after a while, because you're isolated and brainwashed. And helplessness. The victim feels helpless the victim feels unable to escape. All right. So this happens a lot, of course, child abuse, workplace bullying. You need this place to pay your bills, workplace bullying. Of course, domestic abuse, and of course, human traffic. So, according to research, 73% of hostages do not display signs of Stockholm Syndrome. So it's not like everybody does not have this symptom. Some people actually like to be rescued and they know their person's a bad person, but some people, it's 27%, I guess. 1 out of every 4, they tend to defend their abusers. So that may be why it's so hard for you to leave that toxic church, that toxic workplace, that toxic family, that toxic marriage, that toxic friendship group, because you've been trauma bonded. You've been brainwashed. Okay? So beware of that. Think about that. Research that. Thank you guys for watching. Buy my book on Amazon or Kindle. Gaslit, Except for the Narcissist Pit by Righteous Raymond. That's my pen name. Bye.